Welcome to Tech London, a show featuring interviews with London's top creative entrepreneurs, startups, investors, design agencies, internet marketers, and freelancers that make up the Tech London online community, which mostly lives on the Slack instant messaging platform. We rotate through both hosts and guests for these interviews, so you have the chance to hear from multiple perspectives on London's tech scene.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's exciting episode of the Tech London podcast. And we've got Danae back in the studio. Danae, what are you known for now, and what would you like to be known for?
Right now, I'm known for being a person who can help with people whose employers are really messing them about. And that's what I want to be known for too, just by a lot more people.
And you're killing it on TikTok. And since I've just had a little lesson about how to hold my mic if I go on TikTok. But before we came on, we were talking about how the market's changed, about how revenue's growing, which is always very interesting for our like techie startup-y people. So how are you? I mean, obviously you're growing revenue by making more sales, but how are you growing revenue? What's influencing that, and what's the marketplace doing? Because it seems, as much as I love the UK, it's just in my lifetime, I've never seen it in more of a shitstorm and between the economics and the social injustice. So what can you do with that very garbled question?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So as a reminder, my company is a self-representation platform for employees to stand up against illegal behavior from their employers. And what is really playing out in the labor market at a wider level is in 2020, the status quo suddenly upended, and suddenly employees had so much power because there was not enough work. There was too much work for all the people that could do it. And you saw that carrying over into 2021. And then in 2022, the employers kind of struck back. And I would say even the overall market struck back with these mass redundancies, what they called a correction for the 2021 hiring sprees, and the rise of inflation, which isn't actually much inflation so much as it's corporate kind of corporate price gouging. And a lot of this at a macro level is about trying to keep the workforce in its place and trying to not let them get too big for their boots, as they were starting to get, according to these kind of higher forces in 2021. And then you saw this kind of pitched warfare happening between the labor side. So unions, we're seeing strikes now. We're seeing strikes for the first time on a large scale in probably a generation. And we're then seeing these employers trying to flex you have to come back into the office. They're reneging on agreements. You've got Elon Musk, who's suddenly empowering a bunch of people in all kinds of different businesses to start acting like a jerk to employees again and saying, oh, like diversity was just an experiment that failed. Flexible working was just an experiment that failed. We need to go back to the old ways. But employees have had a taste and they don't want to go back to the old ways. And so 2023 is really this year of conflict happening. And then we see that at the micro level every day, where, we have somebody who their employer has reneged on a contract about going remote working, or the kind of like diversity is over. You need to just do exactly as I say. All that kind of stuff is playing out at the micro level at Valla.
Is there, because I get, my heart stops when I hear that, because one of the things we did in the co-working universe, it took us like 3 years to do it, is, and I'd like you to think I did it, but it was actually lots of smart people. We wrote a book, which was it's a handbook about diversity, inclusion, equity, and accessibility. And at the beginning of that, I thought I knew what I was talking about, and now I know I don't know what I'm talking about. But I was amazed, the fact that people in our little co-working industry were paying attention to that, and it got traction. And as through the process of doing that, my main contribution was doing a few podcasts about it, and the amount of stuff that came out of our little industry was about sexual misconduct. You can imagine. It was like Amazing. And what made me start this is a diversity thing. I thought we'd taken like a massive, well overdue leap forward. And I don't understand how people, like Elon and other people can walk around going, oh, it was all a mistake or it's all over. It's like, I feel this is a very naive thing to say, but how can they get away with that?
I think it's the established, remember, power is never given, it's only ever taken. And there is established people in power who are very reluctant to give that up. And I think diversity in 2020 through 2022, diversity was, to put it bluntly, kind of trendy. For the kinds of people that don't really care about it. They saw it as a differentiator in a hot talent market to attract the right people. I think a lot of them were even well-intentioned, but they certainly weren't prepared to actually give any real power to anyone or make any real fundamental change. And what we're seeing now is it's almost like someone like Elon has given permission for the people who never really cared about this in the first place to start trying to change the narrative back to, okay, well, this isn't fashionable anymore. And like it's like in America in the 1970s, especially in the fashion industry, like black is beautiful was like a trendy thing for all the fashion designers to do for a couple of years. And then they went back to being institutionally racist even more. And with every step like that, you are making progress because a number of people have learned a lot more about the injustices that are built into our society. But it doesn't mean that the people who have power are just going to hand it over, and they want things to go back to the way that they were. And they want people to stop making things hard for them. They found that, actually doing diversity, which is what they committed to do, was actually a really hard thing to do. And they'd really rather not have to do that. And so now they want to paint it as a failed experiment.
It is. Being nice is very inconvenient. In our team, halfway through, someone, I'm not going to get into details, but people for very obviously valid reasons had to, tap out at some point, and that left, websites weren't built, and one obvious part of our company has a development team from Ukraine, and obviously that was a little bit of a problem in the supply chain, and it screws you up, and the effort of finding out how to resolve it is the long way round, but it's absolutely the right thing to do. Well,
yeah, this is such a good example because the highest performing teams are diverse teams, but we often don't really look at the next part of that stat, which is why. Why are they the highest performing teams? And it's because diversity creates friction. And a team that can iterate through that friction, that necessary friction, and solve those problems becomes more high performing. They're more resilient of a team. They have better kind of capacity planning, etc. The second highest performing team is a completely homogenous team where there's very, very low friction. It doesn't mean that they're going to be the highest performing. Like, I would even go so far as to say they might be just better than mediocre, but they're going to do pretty good too. And what I'm seeing at that macro level is a lot of people who are very uncomfortable with that friction and thinking, this isn't worth it to me. This is really hard. I'd like to go back to good enough. And, you see companies saying, this is just who we are and we're going to hire people who believe in this. They're choosing the slightly above mediocre option in order to not have to be uncomfortable with the friction diversity causes and the performance diversity yields.
That is very interesting. It is. That's something like as soon as I walk into just every role I've ever had in life, as soon as I walk into a room full of people, even before I knew all the stuff we're talking about today, which was only in the last 2 years I found it out. But even when I walked into a room full of people like me, I just knew it was going to be boring. And I actually absolutely found it uninspiring and would kind of go into what is it when I sort of go into airplane mode or autopilot, and then when I work with, probably work on a team, not even probably, definitely, I work on a team of mainly women. There's about 80% women, and some things I just cannot say anymore, which I used to think were okay. And even that is challenging. Not challenging, let's put that in perspective, but it's just enlightening as well.
Yeah. The irony to me is, we're in an industry in technology where we're always looking for the outsized returns, the outlying returns, the outlying performance. Good enough is never good enough. And we even know how to get to those outsized outlying returns, but growth is discomfort. You cannot have growth without discomfort. And what we haven't learned to do as an industry is to really embrace that discomfort, find how it helps us, get those 10x, 100x performance levels and really celebrate that. Instead, we seem to be kind of reacting to the discomfort, just like you were saying there. That kind of, that's a challenge. It's like, it's uncomfortable. And, a lot of people aren't used to being that uncomfortable. And that's not bad. It's new.
So we always think, this is my little thing, because people love to get all, pumped up on, what triggered that is you said the word 10x, and everyone's like, yeah, let's 10x our results. I'm from a high performing team. And I find that exhausting. so that level of pumping iron in the gym and, staying up late at night, not sleeping for 4 days to launch a product, that area of discomfort seems to be okay. But the area of discomfort we're talking about seems much. Is it because it's uncharted or inconvenient, or why are we all right to nearly kill ourselves staying up for 4 days to launch a product and pump iron, but we don't want to have awkward conversations which are kind of more brain power but less physical energy?
I think because it's coded feminine instead of coded masculine. So, you're allowed to be uncomfortable if you're not sleeping or things like that. That's like that machismo kind of idea. That's an acceptable kind of work, and it's an acceptable kind of idea of what work and performance looks like. The discomfort of anything relating to emotion, interpersonals, anything like that, because it's coded so feminine and therefore weak, unnecessary, not valuable, then it's almost like a double whammy, because it's uncomfortable to begin with. And then there's this societal pressure of saying, why would I invest in, doing this when this is weak? This is something I shouldn't be focusing on. I should just plow through, or tell them to, pull them up by their bootstraps, or whatever nonsense that you kind of hear. So I think there's a real kind of judgment.
To man up. That's the one that sometimes that comes out my mouth without me even thinking. I don't want to say that, and I'll just go, my son will do something and I'll go like, oh, you got to man up, and then I'll stop myself, and then my wife throws a spear from the end of the house into my heart. But it's like kind of autopilot behavior, and it's just not okay to say that. And I know why it's not okay to say that, but it just when without thinking, it just comes out, and it's horrible. It does. Well,
this is the society that we have to, I've been saying this a lot lately, we have to live in the society that we're trying to change, and we have to navigate this all the time. I mean, the fact that most of the work to begin with is actually just recognizing where you're, just parroting something, and then having it really examined if you mean it, what it means, what it's contributing to, what it's actually telling. Even just the act of examining it is really quite radical. And then everything beyond that is the work that has to be done next. But until you can examine it, you can't do anything. And I think, we've been doing a lot of examining lately. And it's just that some people are like, I'd like to stop examining now. I'd like to just go back to the very comfortable thing that happened before, that was comfortable for me, but not for a lot of other people.
So I think, because just in my little, universe, it was like, exhausted by COVID and George Floyd and lockdown and all that stuff. And then there was this like period of kind of accelerated indecision, and people were like exhausted, you know, in the Ukraine, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So that was exhausting, like for everyone. And then there was like the aftermath of exhausting. And now there's like this other level of exhausting that some people around me that are normally, I know, on it, I know, whatever that means, like enthusiastic, are kind of going, oh, I just need a rest now, you know. And I think some of those people kept others like me going throughout the thing. And maybe it's, I know, we need one last push to get to where we could go rather than going back. Did that come out right?
Yeah, I see this trend a lot of amongst a lot of people who have the privilege to be able to take a rest, because it is exhausting. It really is. And you and I do have the privilege to be able to step back from it if we want to, or if we need to, because, you know, a lot of people need to step back from it but can't. And it's a tricky, I think The Good Ally is a great book about this, where it talks a lot about what allyship means and how you can navigate how you navigate being like, I'm exhausted by this, I can choose to step back, so I'm going to, versus I know that other people can't move away from all of this, and, you know, is my guilt helpful and all that kind of stuff.
Is that Nova Reid?
Yeah, Nova Reid's The Good Ally. It's a fantastic book. But I mean, bringing that back to a workplace context, it's still there for all the people who are working in the company. It's still there. And even worse for, you know, a trans woman, for example, right now, or, you know, well, today is Eid, and, you know, our colleagues who are celebrating Eid aren't getting recognition or aren't getting the day off or whatever it is. So the way I think about it is, you know, especially for anybody who has a responsibility, luckily, this isn't a responsibility that has a tax. It's actually a responsibility that has like a real clear benefit to it. You know, some responsibilities are only downsides, but this is a responsibility with a real upside to really lean into that discomfort and find ways to regenerate or maintain a constant kind of level of energy for what they often call the work. Because we're moving into a time right now where everybody's kind of defaulting back to comfort because everything's just too overwhelming. Those who can push through the discomfort and truly innovate and work in a way that is so much more highly productive in the end, I mean, they're going to get the outsized returns in this kind of an economy and in this kind of a labor market. What
do you mean innovate? Because that's a trigger word for me. Sorry.
So there's I think I've mentioned to you before that concept of VUCA. The US military coined it after the Cold War started. It stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And it was them trying to grapple with the fact that war didn't make sense anymore and the enemy didn't make sense anymore. And everything was changing all the time. It was hard to measure. And they were just kind of like, what the hell is going on? And if you read, oh goodness, what's her name? It'll come back to me. If you read about how to...
Brene Mel?
No, this one's called The Fearless Organization. And if you read about how do you actually perform in a VUCA environment? Because, you know, if you think about like the kind of factory model that we've all worked to, that was created for steel mills, and it was a reliable, predictable, understandable set of work that needed to be done that could be optimized, and Taylorism. But we are no longer in reliable, predictable territory. We don't have one person who can just walk in and solve everything for us. We have the smallest unit of innovation is now a team, not an individual, because one individual just cannot hold all the VUCA in the world. And so if the unit of innovation has to be at the team level, then you have to find a way to navigate this VUCA thing constantly which means that you're constantly having to change all the time and come up with new ideas and test them. And so to me, I always think, this is down to that smallest unit of team, and that is a innovation machine that we have to build. And the innovation, because I hate the word too from the kind of RC perspective, that innovation is literally just making our way through this miasma of uncertainty that we're constantly finding ourselves in, business-wise and societally.
Because I hate when people say high-performing innovation leaders. I just there is is it Amy? So I'm looking at things here at 100 miles an hour. Is it Amy C. Edmondson? Is that who it is?
Yeah, that book is fantastic.
Oh, and I'm very excited because it's included with my Audible membership.
Ooh.
The universe is looking after me, because last few weeks, every time someone says a book, and I look probably if I got like £1 for every time I look up a book on Audible, I would have a private jet on 24-hour standby. But it's amazing how many are included. That felt more like a therapy session at the end there, because that constantly shifting, adapting, working it out. Because it's not like me and my folks work in a war zone or a hospital or something, but we're connected to a lot of people, and there's this constant uncertainty and change, which is kind of halfway between exciting and fatiguing, and whatever's going on, it's anxiety in producing, you have to be aware, don't you?
You absolutely do. You absolutely do. And sorry, I'm distracted because somebody's just started a chainsaw outside my house.
That's okay. We're I'm sure there's a chainsaw joke there. So what where can we find you online, and is there any last thought you want us to I'll put links in the show notes to everything we talked about, folks, including Danae's amazing TikTok.
Yeah, that's probably the best place to find me. First is valla.uk on TikTok. That's VALLA. And you'll find me on LinkedIn as well. It's DANAE Shell. And that's probably the two best ways to get hold of me.
Thank you. And just in case Zara, our producer, doesn't manage to get the chainsaw out of it, apologies for that. But this is how we keep it real, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time today, Danae. Folks, if you go to techlondon.io and you can join the Slack channel there, it's only £1 to join the Slack channel, and that's to avoid bots and ChatGPTs and Elon Musk joining. And we'll put a link in the show notes to the Creator Write Club, which is every day from 10 till 12 in a different London co-working space. Whatever you need to write, whether it's a sales letter or a tribunal letter or a letter to Blue Peter, you can come and sit around a table with like-minded people, get your work done, and have a coffee and connect with people. Because part of one of the best things for your mental health is meeting other human beings on the journey. Say goodbye, Danae.
Goodbye, Danae.
You've been listening to the Tech London Show. If you're interested in joining the community or even making an appearance on this show, make sure you join our Slack group over at techlondon.io. Till next time.